The Book of Job, a study of the moral and psychological consequences of suffering and divine omnipotence, by H.G.FASS. Introduction. The biblical Book of Job is one of the most enigmatic and profound pieces of literature within the Abrahamic religious canon. At its core, the story examines themes of suffering, divine justice, and human endurance, and search for meaning, stirring considerable debate among theologians, philosophers, and psychologists. The Book of Job challenges the conventional understanding of retributive justice within a theological context, presenting a challenging narrative for both believers and non-believers alike. This essay aims to explore the complexity of the Book of Job by examining its role within Abrahamic traditions, its impact on Christianity and Western intellectual thought, and the profound moral inconsistencies it presents. We will draw upon insights from Carl Jung and contrast them with Buddhist philosophy to articulate the distinctive treatment of the meaning of suffering within these frameworks. The Book of Job, place in Abrahamic Religions. The Book of Job is a staple of biblical literature, notably within the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament. It begins by introducing Job, a righteous man living in a land called Uz. Known for his piety and faith, Job becomes the central figure in a heavenly wager between God and Satan. Satan challenges Job's fidelity to God, asserting that his righteousness is merely rooted in his prosperity and happiness, suggesting that should adverse conditions ever befall Job, he would readily curse God. God acquiesces to Satan's bet and allows the demon to afflict Job in brutal ways, stopping just short of killing him, stripping him of wealth, killing his children, and crippling his health with agonizing pain and disfigurement, thus setting the stage for a series of dialogues on faith, suffering, and divine providence. In Judaism, the Book of Job explores the limits of human understanding of God's will and the mysterious workings of divine justice. Christianity has further amplified these themes, viewing Job as a model of absolute patience and unwavering faith. Job's unfaltering belief, despite the inexplicable suffering, exemplifies the virtues of total submission and trust in God's mysterious wisdom and plan. As part of the wisdom literature, it conveys the message that faith alone is about trust in the face of inexplicable divine decisions, an enduring theme across the varied Abrahamic faiths. Impact on Christianity and Western thought. The Book of Job has been a vital influence on Christian theology and Western philosophy for centuries. It has provoked significant discourse on the nature of God, divine justice, and the meaning of human suffering. The moral of Job is often interpreted within Christianity as a powerful testimony to faith and perseverance. It underscores that human understanding is inherently limited and submits that trust alone in divine wisdom must prevail, even when suffering is unmerited and undeserved. In Western philosophy, the Book of Job resonates as an existential treatise on undeserved suffering and moral ambiguity. Writing on tragedy and suffering, philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer interpreted Job through a lens of pessimism, focusing on life's inherent suffering and intrinsic injustice. Schopenhauer's philosophy aligns suffering with existence itself, framing the human condition as dominated by suffering and the inexorable will to live. In his view, the Book of Job reveals the absurdity of searching for divine justice, positing that suffering is an unavoidable component of life. Carl Jung's Answer to Job offers a further psychological interpretation, where Job's situation acts as a metaphor for the human psyche, confronting an overwhelming, incomprehensible God. Jung saw Job as more righteous than God, a moral paradox that elevates human consciousness over divine arbitrary inscrutability. Jung claimed that Job's experience catalyzed within him a deep individuation process, a journey towards self-realization, spurred by the alienation from divine favor and human righteousness. Moral inconsistencies and dilemmas. The Book of Job challenges the moral fabric of monotheistic traditions by presenting a narrative where traditional retributive justice collapses due to divine action. Morally, the arbitrary suffering allowed by the divine creates a paradox. Why would an omnipotent, benevolent God permit a righteous man like Job to suffer immensely at the hands of the demon Satan. This presents an existential dilemma about the nature of justice, evil, and the meaning of suffering in the presence of an omnipotent, benevolent, divine creator God. The resolution, wherein God restores Job's fortunes without explaining the rationale for his trials, raises further questions about divine morality and the essence of true faith. Job is left none the wiser for his ordeal, despite his compensation in property, restored health, and new offspring. Jung's critique proposed that the story of Job illuminated a significant psychological and moral disjunction that could not be resolved logically unless it became transcended. He saw a projection of human traits onto divinity, suggesting that God's actions in Job reflect the unconscious shadow of a burgeoning human consciousness. This psycho-spiritual evolution hints at a maturation of religious perception, moving towards self-oriented individuation, rather than blind, helpless submission. Contrasting suffering with Buddhism. Buddhism offers a considerably different interpretation of suffering compared to the Abrahamic traditions by viewing suffering, dukkha, as an inescapable reality of life for beings trapped in cyclic existence due to ignorance. The existence of suffering is not the result of an unknowable divine will or judgment, but rather the direct result of causations through one's own previous behavior and actions, either in this or earlier lifetimes. Instead of a divine will or test of faith, suffering is tied to a resultant mental state that has become corrupted by ignorance, leading to an uncontrolled chain of events and conditions that propel beings to experience suffering. Buddhists advocate for an understanding of suffering on a practical level, employing mindfulness and dispassion through the Eightfold Path to eventually transcend suffering's illusions to achieve enlightenment through diligent positive actions and understanding gained through an evolutionary process of wisdom and merit. This is a stark departure from Job's model based on absolute obedience to an unknowable divine will, simply hoping for the best. Conclusion. The Book of Job profoundly questions the nature of divine justice and righteousness, offering a significant discourse in both religious and philosophical arenas. While within the Abrahamic religions it signifies enduring faith amidst unexplained adversity, it also challenges assumptions regarding justice and morality, revealing inherent logical inconsistencies in addressing the questions of evil and the meaning of suffering in the presence of an all-powerful, benevolent creator God. Only through a regimen of absolute faith alone can this paradox be sidestepped in the Abrahamic model. It is avoided, but logically not resolved, thus being a matter of pure faith and faith alone. In comparing Job's narrative to Buddhist philosophy, faith has no bearing whatsoever. In Buddhism, we see a very divergent approach to suffering, which focuses rather on a practical approach to suffering through a gradual evolutionary process of purification, based on understanding and positive meritorious actions, ultimately leading to eventual liberation from cyclic existence for both oneself and others. Whether one derives religious significance and connection from the Book of Job, or is repelled by it, this work provokes an irresistible, powerful response that cannot be ignored. Perhaps this is this work's greatest contribution, regardless of whether one is a believer or not. Suffering is an inescapable part of our existence, and no matter what we do, we must face it, come to terms with it, and choose the best path forward in life's journey ahead. Doing nothing is not an option.